Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Super cool video for you today. Oh, by the way, you like the new hat? If you've been following me on Instagram or in the WhatsApp group, you know it came from Lukenbach, Texas. And I've got a lot of announcements coming soon with clothing line and my hat line. Stay tuned for that. Actually, I foreshadowed another announcement I was going to make last week, but I'm still working on that video, so stay tuned for that. But I wanted to leapfrog that because yesterday when Charles Kiermoose was in town, you saw the video where he came to my system, but he actually came to see my system after he was spent the night at another person in Houston, Joe, who has somewhat been featured on my channel because he is known for doing vinyl rips to digital, but doing it at a process that is very time consuming, not just putting it in a software that removes ticks and pops and, you know, simple stuff. This is a very high-end ripping process that I'm going to share with you in a separate video, all what he goes through. But more importantly, gets better dynamic range, better performance, and I have a video on my channel where I played both the original and his rips. If you're a long-time subscriber, people couldn't tell the difference. And live, it's even more pronounced, and you're going to hear from Charles Kiermoose, one of the biggest vinyl gurus around, how these rips are superior and how impressed he was with Joe's system, not just in the rips, but also the gear we're going to feature today. I'm known for featuring the most exotic systems in the world. $1 million systems, probably nobody's featured more than me. But it's not really about the price tag. If you really watch those videos, it's about the pedigree of the people that put it together, the synergy, the setup of it, and the story of the owner, and how passionate they are and designed a system for their taste. This is what's more important to me and really showcases audiophiles versus just fancy gear, where, you know, there's a misconception out there that fancy gear, high price tags equals performance. What you're going to see today kind of counteracts that. Even though I featured many expensive systems, it doesn't require that, as you'll see today, for me to feature it. You're going to see in this video one of the most esoteric systems, period, I've ever featured. And it starts with just Spatial X5s, which I'll be completely honest, I know this is going to trigger people, but Spatials are not my favorite speaker, open baffle. I'm an open baffle fan, but they're not my favorite open baffle by far. I've always found the driver, especially the AMT to the other drivers, to be a little less coherent handoff than I liked, and then the presentation 2/3 of the room down. I normally prefer point source arrays, very coherent, mid-range tweeter combinations, electrostatics, planars, and that floor-to-ceiling performance. And while the Spatials didn't cure all of those problems for me at Joe's home, what you're going to hear is a modifications that he's done, nobody else has done. And I heard him at a whole nother level. And it brings up a macro point that you never want to knee-jerk make conclusions about a speaker until you hear what is potentially possible. And the fact that sometimes you can do modifications. Some of these things you may be able to do to get more performance out of your gear, especially with technology like EQs and resonance control properties. You're going to see some tips that can get you higher performance without spending a whole lot more money. Then, in terms of his amplifiers, he's going balls to the walls in terms of exotic parts and removing a lot of parts. So showing that even vintage stuff, vintage recordings can give you reference level performance, doing things the right way. Now, important part to remember, it's going to be cool to see one of these most esoteric audiophiles I've ever featured. That's what I want to show you. But I realize only probably 0.1% of you can even do what Joe does. But it falls in line with some of the other videos I've been sharing with you. People like Steve McCormick who have that same acumen. Other designers that allow you to modify your gear. You can at least hire people to do what he does and get that higher value where you don't always have to spend more money for performance. And in a lot of cases, when you do these modifications, you surpass the performance of the off-the-shelf product, even if it's mega dollar price, because a lot of these mega dollar prices are just there for the bragging rights guys that think that the price equals performance. It's not always the case. Certainly, some of these $1 million systems I've featured, they can achieve a level of performance that is reference, but it still requires everything else to be in line and totally in order. Here's a case where modest amount of gear off the shelf has been modified and curated to reference level performance that you'll hear from other people, including myself, is very impressive and the best I've heard of these Spatials for sure. So enjoy. I'll have plenty more parts though of this video. This is the general walkthrough to start things off. Enjoy, guys. Alrighty, guys, we're here in Houston at Joe's house. He's come to visit me. I finally get a chance to check out his house. It's been on my list for a long time.
Hi guys.
Charles Kiermus is here. He just did a presentation to the Houston Audio Society. I was in Fredericksburg, so I missed it, but I heard it was a great presentation. But definitely wanted Joe to walk through this gear because it may look like normal spatials or something, or tube amps in the back, but anything but normal here, as you can probably start alluding to. But Joe, why don't we get a little quick walkthrough of your gear?
Yeah,
do you want to start with the speakers?
We start with the speakers and work our way back.
Okay, all right.
So these began life as Spatial X5s.
Okay.
These are air motion transformer tweeters. Okay, put out by Bema out of Spain. 12-inch mid, 12-inch sub. Now, the interesting thing about these is that I'm no longer using the internal crossover. They were originally crossed over internally at 1K. They're now being crossed over at 1300. But each driver has its own amplifier. So there's an analog passive crossover that does it following the DAC.
Okay.
Okay, so this and this are driven by this amplifier here, which is a 2A3 Sun that's been modified. It has an interstage Lundal nanocrystal interstage transformer, no coupling caps. None of my amplifiers have coupling caps. They all have interstage transformers. So the mid-range here are directly driven by these amplifiers, left and right. These put out about 18 watts. These are two-stage amplifiers. Again, they have the Lundal nanocrystal interstage transformers. No
which are quite rare to see, I guess, interstage transformers.
Right. So I've gone with interstage transformers everywhere.
Okay.
These are other amplifiers that I have here. They began life as Sun Valley. These are 211 amplifiers, but they have nothing in common with the original Sun Valley. Okay, these are Hashimoto output transformers, Hashimoto interstage transformers. They can run as stereo or as monoblocks. I have them set up now as a monoblock. There are two of them, one here and one here. They put out about 32 watts each, and beautiful sounding amplifiers. A lot of oomph to them. A bunch of other amplifiers that I built here. I call these the Moonshots.
Moonshots.
Okay. These are 807 tubes.
Really cool.
So down here is the control center. Now this control center contains the passive crossovers that split the signal at 1300 hertz, but you'll notice there are 4 knobs here. So you have upper frequencies. This controls and attenuates 1300 hertz and above, 1300 hertz and below. Okay, left side, right side. But what these are Schlegel autoformers.
Autoformers, yeah. Schlegel, okay.
Schlegel autoformers. These are the balanced.
Yeah.
They're hideously expensive. They're about $1,100 a piece, and there's 4 of them in here, along with the passive crossover. Now I can bypass the passive crossover if I want to run these things full range. Right now I'm running them so I got 2 outputs. So the signal comes from, starts right here with this data storage. This is a 16 terabyte solid state. All my information is in here, which we'll get to talk about how we get it in here in a few moments. But here's where my files reside. This connects to a NUC. It's a 11th generation NUC, completely stripped. There's no moving parts, no hard drive, no fans, no Wi-Fi. Even the operating system has been stripped of anything unnecessary, so it makes no noise. This is nothing but a big heat sink that it's sitting in.
Gotcha. So
this then outputs to a very short cable going to the DAC. The DAC is right here.
Hello.
The DAC is a Holo Mei Kitsune edition. The output from the DAC then goes into the control system, splits the signal, goes directly to the amplifiers, all silver wire that I make myself. Okay, these are balanced cables going here, unbalanced cables going here, twisted pair, silver, all silver. And so you now have the lower frequencies and the upper frequencies.
Gotcha.
Okay, each driver being connected with iconoclast cables.
Right. Which is another division of the Blue Jeans family. Kalen designs these very high-end cables.
Galen Grace. Okay.
Yes.
A brilliant engineer.
Former Belkin.
Well, he was their chief design engineer.
Chief designer for them.
Yeah, and he retired, but he was in pursuit of understanding the art versus the science of cables and how do you bring them together.
Right.
And I think he succeeded with these.
Yeah. Yeah, as a representative of Fuji's I know well because
Yeah.
he's involved with some of those.
Okay.
Yeah, great. And then on the back of this spatials, here's where you've done some very important modifications. It's not the most attractive, but let me tell you, this to me with open baffles is one of the biggest weaknesses. And I'm going to have a video about this in the near future, but the one thing with open baffles is that it's not very secure. It's not a triangle form. It's not a sealed box. It doesn't have
a
flat panel.
and it will vibrate.
It will vibrate, and actually, especially when you have large pistonic drivers, even more so.
Well, the key is when they vibrate, what you're doing is you're losing energy
Exactly.
that otherwise needs to come only from the driver.
Right.
You want sonics only coming from your drivers and nothing else. You don't want it coming from your panels.
Yeah, and in some cases, the panels are so thin on certain speakers that they resonate and turn into a musical instrument on top of that.
Exactly right. So here we have 1.25 1.5 angle iron. Okay, that's been bolted on. Not only is it bolted on here, but the bolts are so long they actually go through the front panel as well, and they bind them together. Otherwise, they were just using like a glue membrane.
Gotcha.
Now they're bolted together. So it really stiffened it and then deadened it, and I've got Dynamat over here, and I fully agree. It looks like crap.
Yeah,
but it works.
but I've used Dynamat too, and this is used in cars on the doors
That's
and
it.
stuff like that.
Yeah,
To
see, even the tweeter I've got.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but it really did help. It just focuses everything.
No, this is one of those things where you want to sacrifice the looks because the performance gains, especially with open baffles, is a huge benefit, I can tell you. That's why I looked into Panzerholz and everything, because so many speakers don't put enough attention open baffle to this. They worry about the fancy drivers and technical measurements in anechoic chamber, but they don't realize on the way to getting to that 40 hertz or 30 hertz or whatever they say it can do, these things start vibrating and causing a big issue, for me at least.
So every driver has its own amplifier. Okay, this is driven by the sun. This is driven by what we call the reds that we just showed you. This has its own plate amplifier down here, 500 watts. It's built in.
Okay.
This takes no power whatsoever from the tube amplifiers, none. And then over here we have the Rel Carbon Specials.
Right.
And again, that doesn't take any power from the red amplifiers. It just gets a signal. Okay,
Gotcha.
so 1300 hertz and above, 1300 hertz down to about 95, 95 down to about 35, 35 and below.
Right. And so that's why another reason why these speakers are very friendly to low power tube amps, because what's taking the most power is already self-powered.
Exactly right.
These don't take more than a watt or two anyway.
95 dB efficient, okay, being driven by 18 watts, plenty of power for this. 102 dB efficient, being driven by 3.5 watts,
Plenty enough,
Plenty
yeah.
of power for this.
Yeah, so understanding that is very important as well when you're selecting amps, synergy, and all that. And you're doing your own crossovers. This is much more advanced than most audiophiles obviously would do. And probably people will recognize some of this gear for when I did Emerson's home. We did a, he works with you. I mean, not works with you, but y'all are friends and have done.
I taught him how to build amplifiers.
Yeah, and he does it, and he has the Bach, and we went over there, and he had very similar setups. And as well, Joe did the recordings that I featured on my channel where he rips vinyl to digital. And I did a video where I asked people if they could, just through YouTube, whatever value you could get from that. But very few people, in fact, I think it was almost 50-50, couldn't tell the difference between the vinyl rip and the original. And in some cases, I had to skew things in favor of the true vinyl because you get rid of the ticks and pops. So it was very easy if I would have played parts that had ticks and pops,
Well,
which one would have been?
It's not only the ticks and pops, but it's also the surface noise that gets eliminated. Because that surface noise, the noise that you get with the stylus is on the record, but there's no information. That surface noise is in everything.
Yeah.
And it degrades your signal. Female sibilants, cymbals. So
Right.
you remove the surface noise and everything becomes clearer. So a transcribed record actually sounds better than the original.
And it would measure better on signal to noise ratio.
Oh, absolutely. You know, Charles has been sitting here listening now for, since yesterday. And he can tell you that some of these records, you listen to them, they have a completely black background. There's no noise.
So you get the benefits. In a lot of cases, the vinyl is better because of the mastering. It was mastered vinyl. It has some better traits. Even today, certain vinyls have better dynamic range innately, but you're also taking that vinyl positives, but then the positive digital.
you can look up here on the screen. Okay, these are albums that I've transcribed.
Yep.
And I have about 26,000 tracks of vinyl that have been transcribed altogether. So about 2,500, 2,600 albums. I've been doing this for many years now.
Yeah.
And I also have, in many cases, the vinyl and the CD.
So you can compare.
And I can do an immediate A/B.
Right.
Where you can just sit there and you can go back and forth. You don't have to think about 5 minutes ago what I heard.
Right, yeah.
Okay, this is an immediate A/B.
You could put them in the same playlist and like flip and flop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And every time we have done this, the vinyl is either better or it's about the same as the CD. But I've never had a situation where somebody said the CD is clearly better than the vinyl.
That's interesting.
Normally the vinyl sounds better than the CD.
And you use a program, Isotope, is it?
Isotope is what I use for recording and the editing process. That's the declick and the denoise.
Okay.
Okay, and then after that, the information gets chopped up. The tracks are named. The album art is added. All the information that I get it from Discogs online, and I bring all of that information in. And then my database manager is JRiver.
Okay.
Okay, and I use that.
Yeah, I haven't seen this in a while. I used to use JRiver, but
Well, it was this or Roon, but Roon can't do what I want to do.
Gotcha.
Okay, so this is very fast. It's very powerful, and I'm very impressed with it. So
I think you had the max limit for Roon, wasn't it? They have a max. That was one of the problems.
I don't know how they are now, but when I first tried Roon a couple of years ago, I have some of these albums that are very large, like the Sinatra album that comes with about 17 records inside of it.
Okay.
There's 205 tracks of music in there.
Okay.
Roon could only accommodate 160.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's changed since then. I haven't checked. I don't have that problem, but you have got so many ripped music.
Well, I'm going to rotate that so you can see it.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, and Jason, the interesting part is the discussion we had where regarding tapes made in the 50s and then put here.
Okay.
And the statement of where's the industry going, because stuff that was made in the 50s, as you mentioned, sometimes I don't even hear better sound today.
Right.
And you can explain that better.
I'm going to give you a demonstration. I'm not. It's probably too long for you to record. But essentially, I have some transcriptions here that date back to like 1959, 1957. 1957, which is only 30 years after electronic recording was invented. Okay, so in 1957, I have a Harry James that he heard yesterday.
Yep.
And you listen to this and you say, this is fantastic. But that was done, 67 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
And it sounds better than most of the stuff that you're hearing today. But it was recorded with tubes and transformers and tape at that time. And I'm playing it back with tubes and transformers.
Okay.
And you listen to it, you say, my God, this sounds wonderful. Okay.
They knew what they were doing, actually.
So what has the industry been doing for 60 years?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Well, yeah, it hasn't always been priority performance of the, And that's your turntable, the Rockport.
This is the Rockport over here. I'm going to turn the light on, you can see it.
Do they even make turntables anymore or not?
No, they only made about 500 of these.
Okay, yeah, that was back in early 2000, huh?
No, this is back in the 80s.
80s?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So this thing weighs about 140 pounds.
Linear tracking.
Air bladder suspension system in here. Okay. The platter rides on air. In fact, as a test one day, I took the belt off. And I just spun the turntable, and I came back 40 minutes later.
Still going.
It was still spinning.
Good.
Linear air bearing arm on there with a Lyra Atlas cartridge.
Yeah, that's a nice cartridge.
Okay, and then the cartridge, I don't know if you can see over here, connects directly to the RME, which is the digital analog, and you'll see the silver twisted pair of wires coming in. They're only 18 inches long. Okay, and it goes directly into here. I used to use a phono preamp. I don't use it anymore, and the reason is because RME just built the RIAA curves into it.
Okay.
So I can bypass a preamp, and in my world, there's no electronics like no electronics. So where you can get rid of
the simplicity.
The better it's going to sound.
Yeah.
All of my amplifiers are two-stage if I can, no coupling caps. The more I can eliminate, the better off I am. It sounds better. You get rid of resistors. you're better off.
And RME is one of the best at doing exactly what you're doing here. Is that they develop the stuff for this.
Professionals use
Yeah,
these.
professional.
Yeah.
Now, Jason, while you're looking at the turntable, take a look at the tone arm. Okay.
Like the linear, what is it?
Yeah, there we go. It's linear tracking. He has a soda in the back as well.
Okay.
And I'm a record guy.
Yes.
When we make records, what are we doing? We have the lathe going across.
Yep.
What are we doing? We're playing back.
The same way.
And all of this stuff where, oh, well, I'm having a rock here, and that there were a couple of journalists out there that my next battle may be. Let's take a look at, Clear Audio came back out with a linear tone arm kit.
So you're a linear tracking fan.
Absolutely. I got rid of all of my Thorens, my VPIs, my Hitachis. During COVID, I got a V80.
There's no tracking angle.
Yeah.
You can't have a tracking angle.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You're doing it the same way that the lathe cut it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And when someone says, well, it's rocking, no, it isn't. And this is the real deal. JR and I are guys that love to take a look at cartridges, and you want to play the stamper the music the way that was stamped by the stamper, less the oils, whatever, and with the proper
how it was cut.
Yeah.
Now, again, this is out of my realm because I'm not a vinyl guy. But
I know. We're trying to convert you here.
Well, I just get Joe to rip them for me.
By the way, in '89, I created digital video audio recording, primarily in the surveillance industry, but I started all this. I was the first to use H.264 before Sony and Apple adopted it 5 years ahead of time. And I own nothing digital, you know that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a little conversion, and maybe I have to say hi for the convenience at the house. This, of everything I've heard since I've entered the hobby professionally, you can't beat this. I'm sorry.
So this is now your new favorite home system.
This is my favorite home. I love Margulis, and I love, it's about what we hear, right?
Right.
I'm very humbled to have spent 2 days here.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, I'll definitely have some music clips. Getting back to the linear tracking, maybe you guys can tell me here. Even if you've got everything calibrated with a traditional arm, pivot arm, isn't at certain parts in the record it's more in line than others, whereas the linear tracking does a little better throughout the entire record?
Well, the linear tracker is even all the way across.
That's what I was saying.
If you take a look at a tangent, what are you doing?
That's the angle that we're talking
Yeah.
about before. On a pivot, you're going this way.
Yeah.
You're changing the angle of the cartridge with respect to the groove. With linear, you're coming in this way.
Right.
It's always the same.
So the calibration is basically static throughout the entire part of the record, whereas pivoted arms may have a little more.
Right.
That's why if you take a test record, and I'm a test record guy, just like JR, I get them as many as I find for his collection. 1,000 hertz tone.
Right.
You'll hear, again, depending on where you are centered in the alignment using the Wally Skater and so on, you'll hear the tone go from left to center to right.
Yeah.
You'll get that sweep. It wasn't cut that way.
Right.
You had even signal on both sides of the channel.
That's why it has to be cut this way, so it is even throughout the whole thing. So I do understand the technical advantages.
But the issue has resulted is when we had Studer and Revox come out, Rico, they were all very mechanical. And so you had issues, you had belts, you had lubrication issues and whatever. But technology's evolved.
Right.
My little V80 from Sony, I bought from SkyWest during COVID for $1,800 with an Ortofon 2M on there. And I threw everything else out immediately.
The linear tracking is better. Okay.
And people laugh. They say, well, I have a $100,000 turntable.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, I believe it all starts again. Cartridge, needle contact with the groove, wiring in the tone arm, linear tracking, and then out to wherever you go.
All right. Well, yeah, this is good expert opinions to have. I'm sure there's going to be some people that will claim otherwise. And you're welcome to share your thoughts in the comments. But the proof is in the pudding, so I think what we'll do next is cut the camera briefly. I'll do some listening, and I'll share with you guys some of the music clips in a separate video. But this is very cool. In terms of room treatments, real quick, this is the way to do it. I mean, without having to do lots of room treatment, you can't get much better than a bookshelf.
Well, first of all, it's diffuse.
Yeah.
Second of all, there's mass. And in this room, there's a lot of mass around here. Basically, the room is dead. So people who walk in here look around and say, oh, this is a terrible room. No, it's not. It's actually it's a very good room.
I was about to say, because when you're talking, you don't have an echo. I mean, you can even watch some people's YouTube videos where they're recording. You hear echo in their listening room. You know, it's... and so if you're hearing that echo, that's not on the recording. And guess what happens if you play your speakers in that room? You're going to hear stuff that's not in the recording. That's right. So a dead room to me is actually a positive. And that's what I really like about this room, is that we sound natural. You know, I'm hearing your voice.
Well, here with the lights and the equipment all turned off, and you come in here, it's like you're in a forest all by yourself. You hear nothing.
Yeah.
And you get that, like that buzz in your ear of silence.
Right. So you don't need to do a lot of traditional treatments. In some rooms you do, but in this room you have to judge it independently. This room would not benefit from additional stuff.
Well, you saw Joshua's great room, and you did a tape there. Absolutely,
he needs all of that.
Of course, he does.
Yeah,
and it's wonderful.
It's an open space. Yeah,
it's wonderful. So, but this is just, you know, poor man's deadening right here.
Yeah. And even the couches and all form some form of room treatments, and a very thick couch. So, yeah. All right. I think we covered all the basics. Anything else we didn't cover? I think that's...
Well, I don't know. You want to see the tape room?
All right. Let's... Yeah, we got to do that.
Oh.
Get all the... This thing's badass, too. Okay.
So in here... This is where tape transcriptions are made. Okay. So I have an Atari Studio Deck.
All right.
A Revox. Okay. Dedicated computer. Okay. Up here, 15 inch per second. Studio Masters. This is my jazz area. Easy listening. These are other amplifiers that I built. This is Opera up here.
Okay.
And then here, this is all classical.
Okay. I don't see the Cardi B area, but that's okay. It's all right.
So over here, there's more amplifiers that I've rebuilt.
Cool. Yeah.
These are basically brand new amplifiers. Okay. They use
just the chassis. Yeah. And you replaced the transformers and everything.
No. Then I replaced the painted.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, everything. These are.
Oh, the ICOs. Yeah.
These date back to about 1955.
Yeah.
But they are virtually brand new amplifiers right now, because they have been gutted on the inside and completely rebuilt with film caps, high quality resistors, excellent matched tubes. They're beautiful sounding amplifiers.
Yeah, and we were even talking that my system is efficient enough, because I do roll off the bass to subs to kind of do what the spatials do.
Yeah,
I could probably test those as well, because the Jura Reach are pretty
more over
efficient. Yeah. And what's good about these tube amps is they're not space heaters like with, they don't need all the power that requires the heat.
These put out about 25 watts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these put out about 22 watts. And they're just beautiful sounding amplifiers. Actually, I have built 4 of these. So some guy saw them and he says, I have to have them. So he bought 2 of them.
Really? Yeah. Cool. Yeah. What is this, an auto farmer, or what is this?
No, those are boxes that connect up to the back of the speakers, and actually I'd have to show you the back of the speakers, but essentially now I've replaced these with another set of boxes like that, but they contain my crossover inside.
Okay.
In case I want to run those full range with a single amplifier.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, instead of using the active crossover.
Right.
Yeah.
So... And then there's more tapes down the other hallway. That's where I have rock, female vocal, male vocal.
Okay. You got everything.
So I have about 2,000 pre-recorded
and
tapes.
Even some more tube amp stuff here. Yeah, it's like a museum here.
Well, the thing is, they're basically brand new amplifiers.
Yeah.
They've been gutted, all new capacitors, film caps instead of electrolytics. high quality resistor, silver wire. That is a single-ended. That's a Zen amplifier.
Man, to me, if you're going to go tubes, you might as well, unless you can get one of the really exotic chassis looking. I like this vintage look. And
that's quite an amplifier. That has V-cap, copper and Teflon coupling caps in there. They're like $280 a piece.
Yeah, that's not going to be cheap.
No, and that runs with 6550 tubes.
Yeah, nowadays, you know, an amp like this, that 10 times the parts cost would be a fortune. Is what they're charging now.
This operates in push-pull triode. Okay. And puts out about 24, 25 watts per channel. Okay. And it's got a different front end. It's fixed bias. It's got a 6SN7 front end, 6SN7 drivers. It's got film caps on the inside. It's got all sorts of exotic. I use tantalum resistors throughout. So it's the best of the best that I can put in here. The beautiful sounding amplifier.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, for many audiophiles will never see this level of the hobby being done because, you know, it's more about the fancy chassis, fancy gear, the big price tags.
The chassis is bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's what's inside. Yeah.
The guy that I work with, he's in Colorado. He's a genius. Okay. But he's basically a hermit. He's all by himself. And he designs. He was in tube manufacturing for 35 years. This guy knows tubes. And he uses LT Spice for modeling. And I'll build off of his design. And when I finished an amplifier, it's amazing. The readings that I get, the currents and the voltages I get are dead on with respect to his model.
That's cool.
That's how precise it is.
Right.
And he is so smart. He'll look at a design that was done by Kondo-san. I said, oh, he made a mistake over here. This is what he should have done. He should have done this. Here's a better way of doing it. And I build off of his designs. And I end up with, you haven't heard it yet, but you're about to. Okay, it's a remarkable sound. So,
that's awesome, yeah. So yeah, that's probably the only thing left is queuing up some music. So guys, I'll put that in a separate video, but I'll start recording soon.